For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, the Lost Chapter.
Hey, welcome back. Craig, what are you getting? It's still pumpkin season here at Dunkin' Donuts. So,
welcome back.
Yeah, to Dunks.
Welcome.
Yeah, I want to have...
Welcome back to Dunks.
Right.
Welcome back to Dunks.
Hey, welcome back to pumpkin. I am so excited
really
about
like
pumpkin muffins.
So
you are broken.
I'm on record.
Hey,
I'm sticking with a chocolate frosted.
Is that Luke? Luke, how you doing? What are you doing here all the way from Australia?
What the hell? I walked into like a gap inside a tree trunk, and I wound up in this weird alter universe where there's a donut place here.
Stranger things have happened, Luke. Stranger things have happened. See, I did that.
Stranger things.
So Luke, do you guys have? This is Luke Retallack from World's End Radio and of course Channel Endgame, right? Mm-hmm. Great stuff, Luke. Now, what do you in Australia? Is it called Donuts Dunkin'? Because it's upside down.
Because you're upside down, get it?
Yeah.
No. We don't have the donuts. We just have the holes, and we imagine the rest of the shape. No, that's not how it works. No, actually, funny you should mention that. The big chain that's kind of got the brand impact in Australia is actually Krispy Kreme. I don't know if you have any of those.
Really?
In the States.
We do in the South.
Yeah.
Yes, they're huge here. Yeah.
In the South,
so much so that we actually had no Krispy Kremes over in Western Australia where we are for quite some time. It was all East Coast based, and people used to literally go on holiday to East Coast cities and pack the overhead compartments on the planes on the way back with boxes and boxes of donuts because that was the thing to do. So when they finally opened them up over here, it was like queues for days. It was insane. It was like a Pokemon Go marathon happening at that site.
They were big in New England for a while, and then Dunkin' Donuts rallied their forces and beat them back out of the region.
That's true. Yeah.
But yes, it was there was a brief invasion there for a while. So, Hey, Luke, have you been watching any of the new fall TV shows, particularly the geeky TV stuff like superheroes and everything?
Oh, have I?
Yeah, right.
I have this unique condition, which is kind of what I like to term nerd insomnia, where for the last couple of decades of my life, I've had this great ability to only sleep for 3 or 4 hours a night because my brain's always in overdrive.
Yeah,
so I watch a lot of TV.
Yeah.
Are you tired all the time?
Nah, it's totally normal for me.
Really?
It's funny you should mention that. I've actually spoken to medical professionals about the lack of sleep that I'm able to subsist on, and they think for me it's entirely normal. I'm just a superhuman, apparently.
Right? Yeah,
So,
I've heard of people who are like that, and I'm jealous like you cannot believe.
Yeah.
If I don't get 7 or 8 a night, I'm wasted.
Yeah, I can run on 5. If it's 5, I'm good. But
if I run on 8, I actually start feeling ill.
Yeah, less than 5 though.
Wow.
Less than 5, I start to break down. So it's 5 is the magic number for me. Well, speaking of shows, because I have been up late watching some of these shows this year, I think we are reaching a point now, and quite frankly, there's a lot of good superhero shows on television right now. But I really think that Netflix is dangerously close to creating a TV triumvirate of their Marvel universe, on par with what's been done with the movies.
I don't think they're dangerously close. I think they're there.
I agree. So have you guys been watching Luke Cage?
Just finished before we started recording.
Now,
tonight.
careful. I am only on episode 7, so I must be, or 6. So I got to be careful with spoilers here. I don't know if we want to go into spoilers, but what are you guys enjoying?
No spoilers.
What are you guys enjoying about Luke Cage?
He's got a great name. I think he does
have a great name. Cage. It's so strong. It's too bad it's weak up on the front end, but Cage. It's great.
Shots fired. No, look, I'll be really careful with spoilers if you two haven't sort of gotten through all of it.
I just finished, but Russ hasn't, so let's be gentle.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, I devoured the entire series over the course of a couple of days because there's this thing when you have a lot of geeky friends that like to watch shows like this. They like to watch everything and then spoil it for you.
Well, that's the problem.
Without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe we should put that warning up front for anyone who's going to be listening to this. So we're probably going to talk about a bunch of different
There
TV
may be
shows
some spoiler. We're going to try not to be super spoily here, but
I'm almost incapable of spoiling most of the things that we've got on here.
Oh, good. But Luke Cage, you have to watch this show because, as you know, as for listeners who don't, if you somehow, and there's no spoilers here, but there's some things they did in the show that are really, really cool. So First of all, it's if you don't know about who Luke Cage is, obviously he's a Marvel superhero, and he typically hangs out with Iron Fist quite a bit in the comics. But that's not a problem because Iron Fist has got his own show coming this spring, and I cannot wait for that because Iron Fist is one of my all-time favorite heroes. But Luke Cage, they've already done crossovers with Daredevil, and some of the characters have also crossed over with Jessica Jones, right? So now
he was in Jessica Jones.
He was in Jessica Jones,
like half the season. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The nurse has been in all 3 shows, right?
Yes. Yep.
So she's been in with Daredevil and with Luke Cage and with Jessica Jones. I'm sure Luke Cage will cross over with Iron Fist. He's got to. And then they're going to come out with Defenders. I don't know when Defenders is scheduled to come out, but of course that's going to bring all the
next year.
Yeah,
fall next year, I believe.
So that's going to be awesome. So this is, and then is Punisher getting his own series too? I think he might be, right?
He is. He's actually getting.
Yeah,
I think it may be launching before the Defenders. In fact,
right. So this is insane. So they've got some great characters, and they're actually developing the world. We already saw Punisher in sort of like a little cameo, a couple episodes in Daredevil.
He was central to that
season,
to
really.
The last Daredevil.
Yeah, so this has been, I just think they nailed it with Daredevil, which I was nervous about because the movie was so bad. But they totally nailed it with Daredevil. They really nailed it. Jessica Jones was just like eerily good in ways that, but now this season, Luke, I was excited for. And again, and also what's really amazing about this to me is they make these shows feel very, very unique. Like
they're very different one from another.
Luke Cage is not Daredevil with a different hero. It's a different show. And Jessica Jones is a different show.
Formulas. And I mean, they're really, it's great because they haven't they didn't this formula worked. So now we're going to do this with a different hero and this with a different hero, but it's always the same. And there's always this office and it's very different. And I love Luke Cage because it captures that urban African-American culture in Harlem, as far as I know, very, very well, and I loved that color and that edge.
I would call it Harlem noir. Is basically what they hit.
Yeah,
Well, I like that. That's a good line.
Yep, and the music is. I think Jessica Jones was good, and I loved it when it was on. But in retrospect, I look back and I think it was probably good because the bad guy was awesome.
Yes,
and she was good, but the bad guy really kind of overshadowed her. Mm-hmm. And in retrospect, I think they just keep leaping forward. Luke Cage has an awesome hero. He has awesome secondary characters. And the bad guys, multiple, I think, were just phenomenal. They were like movie quality depth of character for me.
Well, what's interesting about Luke Cage is Luke Cage is a really interesting hero because he's dangerously close to Superman in that he's essentially indestructible. So when you have an indestructible hero, it can be hard to write for that guy, right? Because it's like he's indestructible. And if you look at what they did with Daredevil, Daredevil's shtick was pretty much every other episode, Daredevil got the crap kicked out of him, right? I mean, pretty much it was Daredevil's awesome, but oh god, with Luke Cage, it's like he's just going to wade in and not be a problem. But the problem Luke has is the moral dilemma he's in, the complexity of his character, the complexity of his surroundings, the complexity of all that stuff and the society he's in makes for a really compelling show. And the question is, when you are that powerful, how does the responsibility weigh on you? How does it work? Does doing it is helping it actually help? And that whole concept and the whole morality play is just, I think, awesome.
Yeah, there's a really funny conversation, and I don't know I think you've probably gotten past this point, actually, Russ, if you're up to around episode 6 or 7. And very, very minor spoiler here, but there's a conversation that takes place at one point during the series where they're discussing Luke Cage's indestructibility, like his bulletproofness, and someone actually suggests, "Well, have you guys tried drowning him?
Right,
have you tried poisoning him?" All these things get discussed, and they don't really go anywhere, which I thought was interesting.
Well, one guy's like, "What is he? Does he walk on water?" Well, does he? There's another great one. I don't know if you guys caught this because you have to be kind of a comic book fan, but they do an episode, I think it's episode 4, where they do his origin story, right? So they kind of go back to how he got his powers. And did you notice that when he got his powers, he is dressed like the original version of the comic book of himself. And
that was so good
with the headband and the wrist things and even the yellow shirt. And then he's walking and he looks at himself in the reflection of a car and he's like, I look like a fool. Yeah, like so awesome. It was like
there's some really good subtle call-outs through that entire series too,
Right.
and it even ties back into some major plot points from
Yep.
Jessica Jones,
Yep.
which was a really good payoff.
Yeah.
But I think that the show benefited a lot from the character having that really strong introduction in Jessica Jones.
Yes.
They
Yep,
could kind of bypass a bit of the character setup and get straight into the action. They do go back and revisit it, of course, in greater detail.
Yep.
But having that setup already done for you, I mean, we sort of see this, play out differently in various different superhero movies these days, like whether they try to do the origin story or not. And I think a lot of them are trying to move away from the origin stories now because it's become a bit too formulaic.
Right.
And a way that you can introduce a character without having to do that allows you to get stuck into the action straight away, and it's really refreshing.
Well, I loved how they did it in Avengers with Spider-Man. He didn't really have his the reboot of Spider-Man showing up in the latest Avengers movie. Now Spider-Man's done. They don't have to do his reboot again.
Yeah. Everyone knows who he is.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So Luke Cage definitely awesome, and that's I would say for me right now the Netflix sort of Marvel universe on Netflix, if you will. I don't know what they're calling it exactly because it does tie to the movies, but they never mention them. I mean, they mention the movies, but they don't mention them. It's kind of a weird way.
I think it's no. What do you mean they don't mention it? Every time we turn around, there's that guy on the street who's selling bootleg copies of
but
the Incident.
But they never say.
Yeah.
They never. You'll notice they never use a licensed term. They'll never say.
They talk about Iron Man a lot.
No. They say. They say
Yes,
the man
they
in the
do.
metal suit. They never say Iron Man. I don't think
No,
they do.
they absolutely. Well, they might
They
not have
definitely say Hulk.
by episode 4. They
Yeah.
say Hulk. They say there's a song that has Iron Man in it that a guy is singing later in the season.
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
that might be happenstance.
Might be
Russ,
coincidence
for
then
you.
me, yeah. But I love it, and I do love it ties in. And they talk about the incident a lot. You're right, and the aliens from invading New York and all that stuff.
It's not as blatant as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but they definitely reference it.
Right.
And it does exist in that same universe.
Yeah.
I will differ on one point of feedback, though, and I don't want this to tailor your thoughts moving into the second half of the season, Ross, but Craig, I must disagree with you on the villains. I thought that one of them in particular was extremely weak, and I was very disappointed with how that played out. But towards the later.
I would say if you say there's 4 basic villains, I think one of them I would agree. I think we're probably thinking of the same one.
Yeah.
But in the overall culture of villains, I think the overarching culture I thought was great for the villain culture that was there. I'm trying so hard to dance around things. The culture that they set up.
There's no David Tennant. There's no Vincent D'Onofrio.
Exactly. Yeah.
David Tennant was so good in Jessica Jones. Oh my god.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my god.
They mentioned that too.
So Luke, you mentioned Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I must admit that I bailed out on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. about middle of last season, and I just couldn't watch it anymore. And this season has me intrigued because of a certain guy with a flaming skull showing up in the previews. But I still don't know. I mean, I didn't really like the whole we're doing X-Men, but we're not doing X-Men thing. So are you still watching it, Luke? What are you thinking of it?
Yeah, I'm extremely easy to please. So my bar may
we'll
be a
keep
little
that in
lower
mind.
than some people. I mean, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for me is dumb superhero fun to the nth degree, but it's a show that's evolved a lot. I mean, the very first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. kind of struggled to find its footing until that huge incident in the Marvel Cinematic Universe where Hydra was revealed.
Right. I loved it, that part. That was awesome. Yeah, I liked that a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of played out really well in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's kind of kept that long-running connection with the cinematic universe. And I mean, it doesn't connect so much to the I guess the New York sort of Marvel universe, which encompasses the shows that we've just spoken about, loosely, but not so much because they are jet setting all around the globe. But the big themes that they explore, I think, are very clever in how they link up to the larger narrative that's playing out. And I mean, the one that you're referencing is the ongoing plot lines with the Inhumans, which are kind of like I can't believe they're not X-Men, coward people. Right. Yeah. And I mean, they have to be very careful with obviously not impinging on Fox's licensing with the X-Men. You can't
Sony
sort of
or
say
somebody's.
the word
Yeah, right.
Sony or Fox. Yeah. The term mutant is never used. There's characters that they've introduced. And I mean, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in the cinematic universe are a great example of this, where, in comics, we would know them as mutants, straight out of the X-Men series. Right. Whereas in, the movies, they are powered people. They've come across their powers in different ways. And, for all intents and purposes, they are inhumans by the definition they use in the show. But the big thing that's going on at the moment in season 4 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is actually getting S.H.I.E.L.D. out of the shadows and back into the public image.
Oh, cool.
So S.H.I.E.L.D. was disbanded a little while ago when the sort of whole Hydra incident went down. Yep. And they've kind of been operating as a spy network from the deep, dark bowels of humanity. But now, with everything sort of escalating, and in the cinematic universe, what's the piece of legislature they signed in Civil War? It was the Sokovia Accords.
Yeah.
Yep.
That basically forced registration of super-powered people. It's now created an environment where S.H.I.E.L.D. can look to operate back in the light again, and Hydra's been all but defeated at this point. So, they're kind of reinventing themselves. So much so that Agent Phil Coulson, who's sort of the key lead, is no longer head of S.H.I.E.L.D. because he's sort of a known entity who has been killed before, and him being back in charge would be a bit weird for their public image. So he's back into sort of agent mode, and he's kicking it with the rest of them, sort of going on missions regularly. And the Ghost Rider thing is really intriguing. It's not the Nick Cage Ghost Rider from the movies, the Hell Demon motorcycle riding version. He's actually got a huge muscle car. Right. So very different take on it, but it's great. And what they've done so far, I'm very impressed with. So I think it's one, if you've kind of ducked out of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and you're wondering whether it's worth having a look in again, this season is actually a really good jumping back on point, because it's not entirely necessary to know all of the backstory beyond the fact that there are Inhumans around the place, and S.H.I.E.L.D. as an agency is sort of looking to become public again.
All right. Well, you may have convinced me. I'll have to check that out again there. Craig, are you watching it at all, or have you checked out?
I have not. Well, it's my TV watching schedule has kind of gone in the opposite direction of Luke's. It's very hard for me to watch a lot of TV for a few different reasons lately. And so almost all of my standard network shows are just piling up on my TiVo. And because things keep, like, I wanted to watch Black Sails all over again, so I watched that, and stuff piled up on my TiVo. And then we got into Bolt Action and Conflict 47, so I watched Band of Brothers, and stuff piled up on my TiVo. And then Luke Cage dropped, and then Westworld dropped, and so it's and then Longmire dropped, and so it's like a boom, 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 and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is on my TiVo, and I will, because of Luke's recommendation, make getting it back into the rotation a priority as soon as I can.
Well, it is tough because there's a lot of good shows right now, right?
There is.
It's a good problem to have, though, really.
Right. It is. It's absolutely. Yeah, much rather do that than just aimlessly click through the stations on my free time.
Yeah,
fall down the YouTube black hole.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, cutting myself off entirely from the DC universe has helped a lot, which brings up our next series of shows.
Right, so DC's got their own handful of shows that are all pretty darn good, too. So, Luke, have you been watching Supergirl? Did you watch last season?
See, Supergirl is the guilty pleasure show of my rotation.
My family loves Supergirl, and I got to say, it's kind of like you were saying with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's just fun, superhero, popcorn fun. It doesn't take itself serious. Actually, most of the DC shows are kind of like this. They don't take themselves too seriously. And they have a lot of fun. And I think Supergirl, I think Calista Flockhart is the role of the newspaper report, owner is fantastic.
Cat Grant.
Cat Grant is an awesome character. She really works it. Makes the show. And I like what they've done with Supergirl. I'm a little nervous. I honestly haven't seen any of season 2 yet because it's just dropped, I think, last week. And I have to watch it with my wife, and she's been traveling. So we haven't watched episode 1 yet. But I know Superman's coming back this season. And he wasn't really in season 1. He was just sort of, you knew he was in the universe, obviously. He had a couple cameos, very brief. I know he's going to be in this season a little bit. I'm a little nervous about that because I'd kind of rather have it be about Supergirl and not Superman, but we'll see. But Luke, have you had a chance to watch this season? I will
say I have watched the first episode of the new season, and if you are nervous about Superman, don't be, because the guy they've got playing him is phenomenal.
Oh, good.
He's really good.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right, good.
One thing they do with Superman, they don't actually make him the focus. He is very much kind of a supporting cast member without being overshadowed in the nature of being Superman. I think he's still that ever-present force that is very significant. But they focused a lot more on his relationship with Supergirl, and because they're cousins essentially, and a lot of the advantage that she's got in that relationship is that she actually remembers her childhood on Krypton because of the time where she actually ejected off into the escape pod and sort of got caught in the I think it was the Shadow Zone, Nether Zone. I've totally got the name wrong.
Right.
But because of that time paradox, Superman, Clark or Kal-El actually hits Earth at a time that kind of puts his age out of sync from what was the case on Krypton. So, he actually is a lot older on Earth than he was when they were sort of existing together on Krypton, which means that he kind of has the age benefit, and he's got all of this experience from sort of being out as a superhero for much longer than Kara Zor-El does. But he's missing all of this prior knowledge of his heritage, of his birthright, and he doesn't remember his family, and he doesn't remember life on Krypton. So Supergirl is able to sort of fill in that a very important role in his sort of existence, which is great. So yeah,
I think it's fun. In fact, it's well. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say it gives him an important part to play without him sort of being the runaway sort of lead of all of the action that's happening, which you would expect given the power levels involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's awesome, and really, quite frankly, Supergirl is now my favorite of the DC shows. So I used to, and this is interesting, right? So Flash is still there, so I still like Flash. I used to love Arrow. I've gotten out of Arrow, and I tried to get into Legends of Tomorrow and couldn't. So right now, I still watch Flash and I still watch Supergirl, but I don't watch Arrow or Legends. So, Luke, tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Cool. You're doing everything wrong.
Oh,
no. No, seriously. I mean, they're all great shows for different reasons. And I think that, again, similar to how the Marvel sort of TV universe has played out, they all have a very different feel and where they fit, which is great. There's no two shows that are a clone of each other. I mean, the Supergirl universe is everything that the DC cinematic universe isn't. It's light. There's hope. Right. There's bright colors. You can see that everything is genuinely good, despite the fact that they're fighting off these super powered villains and, in the face of great adversity. But you still get that really great sense of where the original Superman movies were, sort of occupying that kind of light, space of Superman being a true hero.
Right.
And there's this awesome callback in the first episode of season 2, which I think you're going to love when you hear it, Russ. I mean, obviously you're a fan of the very first Christopher Reeve Superman.
Of course
film.
I am. Yes.
You remember the supporting cast, particularly those characters that assisted Lex Luthor.
Yes. Was there a cameo?
There's a character, not so much a cameo of the original actor, but a name that as soon as you hear it in the tone that it's uttered, you'll want to applaud the show.
Good.
It's
good.
Fantastic. So, so no specific spoilers on that. But as far as the other DC shared universe shows go, they've done a really good job at crafting those. My favorite out of all 4 of them at the moment, if we're counting Supergirl, Flash, Arrow, and Legends, is probably Flash.
Yes.
Followed closely by Legends of Tomorrow, and I'll explain why.
Really?
So, yeah. Legends very much did the same thing that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did, in my eyes. Like, it was a show that started off as a little bit of a mess. There was a lot of characters involved. They had their kind of, challenge or adventure of the week formula, which didn't play out particularly well. It was just like an opportunity every week to showcase 1 or 2 of the cast in a little bit more light, and it became a little bit predictable in terms of the cycle that they were moving through. Later in the season, when stuff actually gets quite real in terms of the threat that they're facing across time and space, a lot of the impacts of what they're doing actually carry across multiple episodes, and the way that it all wraps up and concludes is nowhere near where I thought it was going to be, which is actually a great thing in this case because it has some pretty long-lasting impacts on the future of humanity that I think are going to play out in future seasons of the show.
Yeah, that's good to hear because I gave up after like 2 episodes or 3 episodes because I felt like it didn't know if it was trying to be Doctor Who or what it was trying to be, and it was kind of like I didn't know where it was trying to go, and I just didn't like what it was. So
it gets dark.
It probably needs it, and I think Arrow went too dark, so hopefully it doesn't go quite that place. I don't know what happened with Arrow, but I just kind of lost after a while. Are you still into Arrow, or did you?
Arrow's great. I mean, I think the problem that Arrow's faced is that they had their strongest season in season 2 when they had Manu Bennett playing Deathstroke.
Yes. Awesome.
And that was a huge highlight because he carried that role magnificently. It was really, really good. Their villains have not really been up to the same caliber since that point. I mean, they had Damien Dark last season, who was kind of introducing the elements of mysticism and magic into the universe,
right?
And it had that vehicle for a fantastic cameo by John Constantine, which was awesome episode. But they've kind of suffered from that sort of split direction and not really focusing on a big bad in the same way. Season 5, which is what we're up to now, it's unsure as to whether that's going to happen or not. Some of the staple Arrow crew have kind of moved on to other things, and whether they come back or not remains to be seen. He is going to be sort of recruiting a new group of vigilantes to assist him, and I don't know how strong those characters are going to be. That could carry the show, or it could fail miserably based on those casting choices. But one thing that is quite important is that he has gone back to a bit more of a brutal ends justifies the means kind of approach, and he death and killing is back on the table at the moment. So that's real interesting.
Yeah, that is. He got Dangerous and Close to Batman there for a while, so I like him being a little darker, which is good. That's cool.
That's it. Yeah. But Flash. Oh my God, Flash is
awesome.
It is
like
phenomenal.
Flash.
Yeah. They're of course doing the Flashpoint storyline in the early parts of season 3, where Flash basically goes back in time to try and change some significant events that have occurred in his past, namely the murder of his mother, to change the timeline for the better. But as often happens with time travel, he discovers the impact of messing with the timeline and some of the bad stuff that happens as a result, and things do not go quite back to normal when he resolves that story. So we're going to see how that plays out. And it's been a good way to bring some new talent into the team and some new threats as well. So very much enjoying that at the moment.
All right, well, that's cool. Yeah, I definitely want to check that. Keep up with Flash. I like that show a lot. Speaking of the DC universe, though, Luke, do you watch Gotham?
I do. Gotham is a strange beast.
I like it. Now, I have not. I am behind on this season, so I'm looking forward to jumping back in again. Some of these shows I watched with my wife, and she's been traveling a lot, but we're looking forward to catching up on a lot of them this weekend. What do you mean by
a strange beast?
Yeah, what have you liking about season 3, or not liking?
I've got a love-hate relationship with Gotham. I think they have some good stories, and they have some excellent characters that sort of
amazing actors
pop in. Yeah. I mean, they obviously try and use the entire rogues gallery to a certain extent that the Batman universe and some of the extended DC universe in a way implements in the comics and some of the past TV shows and movies and so forth. But I think it has very, very mixed results. Some of it is so blatant in your face that you just get sick of it, such as when Edward Nygma was introduced very early on in season 1. It was basically, coffee mugs with question marks and riddle me this, riddle me that from the very first episode. And it was like, okay, we get it. You don't need to beat the horse to death.
Right.
Some of them are a lot more subtle, and I like that. I think that the way that last season of Gotham, the storyline involved sort of Hugo Strange. So I can't say Doctor Strange, actually. That's going to confuse
different guy, yes. But, yeah, that was good.
Hugo Strange and, the menagerie of horrors that he was secretly sort of breeding beneath the bowels of Gotham.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, that was really cool. And sort of, using the Arkham Asylum as a vehicle for a lot of that, horror that was breeding was very cool. So season 3 looks like it's going to be very much about the Court of Owls. I don't know if you're familiar with the famous Batman Court of Owls storyline. So it's
only familiar through the Batman miniatures game website.
There you go. All right, cool. So it's very much a subversive secret society that is, pulling the strings of a lot of stuff that's going on in Gotham, and has, long-running ties with Wayne Enterprises and of course the Wayne family. So Bruce is on a bit of a mission to sort of discover what's going on there, and the great risks that entails. But there's a few weird storylines going on at the moment. Bruce Wayne has a doppelganger running around. Oswald Cobblepot has just been running for mayor. It gets weird. So I don't quite know where this one's going to go. I'll continue watching it because I'm a sucker. But yeah, I take it with a grain of salt, I guess, is probably where I'm going with that.
I like the acting. I really like Gotham, so I'm looking forward to season 3. But we'll see what happens. But I'm really enjoying it. All right, so the new hotness. What are you guys thinking of Westworld? Craig, go.
I loved the opening episode. I haven't been able to watch the second episode yet, but I loved the music. I loved the tension. I loved they filled in a lot of gaps on how did we get here? Who are all these people? They did a lot of that, I thought, subtly and kind of insinuated it into conversations, which is a great way to do it, as opposed to just kind of having like a big info dump at one point in the show. I love that we really don't know what's motivating most of these guys. I love the head writer.
Yes,
that was I think my favorite moment in the openings in the opening series was, in the premiere was him like, oh, I rewrote the speech. Wait till you hear the speech, and then what happens for the speech, which is and what the woman in charge of the park when she turns to him and says what she says. What I laughed out loud,
right?
All alone in my little TV room.
They've really set him up as quite a heel, I think.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that you don't know who the robots are at the beginning.
Yeah.
And they kind of like lead you along several primrose paths. I love the sense that the robots are all like interchangeable. Like, oh yeah, that guy, he used to be the bartender and now he's the main bad guy. And what they do with that towards the end of that first episode, I think was phenomenal. And the last moment of the first episode was gasp-inducing awesome.
Oh yeah.
I mean, for what it hinted at what's to come. That was great.
What do you think, Luke, of Westworld?
I think that Westworld is going to be the sleeper hit of the next 12 to 18 months. I think that this show has a lot of potential.
I think HBO's got another Game of Thrones in their hands. I think this could be huge. Yeah.
I do. I think HBO are just going to be, laughing all the way to the bank.
Yes.
Their $100 bill encrusted mattresses just bouncing up and down on them.
Yeah.
I mean, Westworld is frightening. I think it brings a question to my mind that has sort of been simmering since I saw the Ex Machina film a year or so ago.
Yeah, right.
And that is, I'm going to pose this to you. What's more frightening than an AI passing the Turing test?
Right.
What do you think? I would say that it's an AI that deliberately fails the Turing test.
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of the situation that's possibly playing out in Westworld. I mean, we've got a whole bunch of synthetic humans essentially, and you really don't know what's going on inside those CPUs or those minds. Which of them are actually self-aware and hiding it or not, and which are not. Westworld's actually based on, I'm going to get this wrong because I've been meaning to research this since it started. It's based on an old movie or an old TV series, isn't it? So part of the story has been done before, to my understanding.
It's a Yul Brynner movie based on a novel.
The movie came first, I think, and then the book was published later.
It was a novelization. I think you're right.
Michael Crichton wrote the original screenplay, which became this is my understanding of it, became the first movie, which then was published later as a book. And then later there was a really bad TV series in the 80s based on the movie. So there's been all three once, but this is the first real attempt to reboot it right, if you will. And I'm with both of you. I've gone through the second episode now, and it was just as captivating. I find the story's very compelling. It's creepy, but in a compelling way. It's very Game of Thrones in terms of the level of violence and sex and all that stuff, but it works kind of like it works in Game of Thrones with the storytelling and the craft and the medium here. And it's just a really, really cool concept. And what's funny about it is because it's so old, I mean, the first movie came out with the 70s, I think, and yet it's sort of a replay of a lot of more recent themed stuff too, right? I mean, there's elements of all kinds of recent, big, you can see different things going on here from different plot points and different archetypes that have been around a while now, but it's really interesting what they're doing. And I think you're right, Luke. I think this idea of, are the robots sentient? Is someone screwing around with it? And I just really like the visuals. Like, I love the way they make the robots out of sort of 3D printing type technology, right?
And
the whole intro movie,
which makes
sort of
for
that.
A great intro.
Yeah, the intro of the horse running while it's kind of being printed in 3D is sort of a really cool visual up there with sort of the Game of Thrones, a sort of pop-up book sort of, intro there. So I really like it.
I call the intro Vitruvian synthetic man.
Yes, right. It looks awesome. So I think they've got a huge hit here. I'm really curious where they go. The acting. I mean, so many good actors in the show. So much powerful thinking going on. So really good stuff.
Anthony Hopkins kills it.
Oh, he does. He totally kills it. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's great in it. So yeah, it spared no expense on the talent all the way around on that show. So good stuff. Running along, but with a couple more here. Have you guys seen the trailers for Timeless? Have you seen the first episode yet?
No.
This is one you're going to have to get me up to speed on. I'm not following Timeless.
So the first episode I think just dropped yesterday. I've not watched it, but I've seen the trailers, and it's basically about time travel. So people go back in time to change history, like stop Hitler and things like this. But there's a guy out ahead of them that's causing problems, and they're chasing him down. What I can't discern more from the plot than that, but the costumes and the effects look amazing. Like, there's a scene of them with the Hindenburg, and there's a scene of them, and then just the effects and the costuming look amazing, like really high budget. So I'm really curious about it. My kids are just at an age now where they're really into history and stuff, and so they're really like, this looks cool. It's on major network television, so it won't have any of the
NBC on Mondays.
There you go. So it won't have any of the sort of Westworld type over the top stuff, but it looks pretty interesting. So I'm really looking forward to checking that one out. I didn't know if you guys had a chance to watch it yet or not.
No, I haven't seen it, but it looks cool.
Yeah. And the last one. So Luke, are you watching Ash versus the Evil Dead, or is that you, Craig?
No,
I watched
me.
the first. I watched the first season. I didn't know the second season was out yet.
What are you thinking, Luke?
It is hilariously disturbing on a level that I've not experienced in a long time.
First season was great.
It was.
The first season was excellent, and I'm very satisfied with the way they ended the first season too, because they didn't take the easy out.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, there was. Ash basically was placed in a position towards the end of the first season where he could essentially beat the big bad or take the safe option and live, the life that he's always wanted to live. And Ash, being the flawed character that he is, I'll leave it up to your imagination as to which one of those two he chooses. Right. That kind of sets the scene for where season 2 begins. But one really interesting change between season 1 and season 2 that's happened in the background, and I'm curious as to how this is going to play out, is season 1 of Ash vs. Evil Dead. I believe there was a legal issue where they actually didn't have the rights to reference any of the material from the original Army of Darkness film, so Evil Dead 3. Yeah, but apparently something's changed now, and now they can. So
cool.
And it makes sense in my mind too, because timeline-wise, it explains why Ash is where and who he is today.
Yeah.
But it also, in tone, I think Ash vs. Evil Dead matches Army of Darkness a lot more closely in terms of the level of humor and the darkness than it does the original Evil Dead films, which are just out-and-out horrors, of course. So,
cool.
But the one thing I will say about season 2 of Ash vs. Evil Dead, I've seen 2 episodes now. The second episode contains a scene in a morgue that is the most frightening and horrific half hour of television you will ever experience. Think of the worst possible thing that he could do with a corpse, and then scrub it from your brain, because it's 10 times worse than that.
Oh. See, I tried to watch it, and it had gone so dark I couldn't watch season 1. Like, it was too dark for me.
It's dark. Yeah. It is very dark.
Maybe I'm just too too squeamish nowadays. I don't know, but I couldn't. And I love the movies, but I couldn't get into the series.
Oh, if you're squeamish, there are buckets of blood and gore and other stuff that you will not. You'll not like.
It was like that, because I can watch Game of Thrones, I can watch Westworld, but I can't watch this. It's too much. So just to give you
not safe for kids, that's for sure.
Definitely
no.
Well, Luke, thanks so much. We're running along here, so thank you so much for joining us here in Dunks today. It was great to catch up with you. And
always,
we'll have you back on the main show here in about a week or so.
Sounds good. I'll catch up on some more TVs in the meantime. Yeah, excellent. And see if there's anything else I can recommend to you when we do that.
Sounds awesome. All right, Luke, have a good week.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.